Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to the Classic Universal Horror Podcast. I am your host, Jennings. I am a longtime Classic Universal Horror collector and historian. And this is a special podcast where we talk to people who are fans of Universal Classic Horror, and we discuss how they got started in it, what influenced them, and what their favorite films are. It's kind of a chat between friends, as opposed to just someone coming on and giving a dissertation or a lecture about Universal Horror. I thought it'd be fun to just get different people from different walks of life, writers, actors, directors, friends of mine, as we come on and we just discuss our favorite films and just the different ways it influenced our lives. But today is a very special show. We have a guest, Perry Shields, who basically played Jack Pierce, the makeup man for Universal Horror, in a stage play. And he did a lot of research on Jack, so he knows a lot about him. And I don't think Jack gets a lot of credit. He's very underrated in the annals of classic horror. And he did all the classic horror makeup that you can think of, the Frankensteins and the Draculas and the Wolfman and the Mummy. And I'll be showing photos from those films of him applying the makeup on Karloff and Lugosi and Glenn Strange. So it'd be kind of fun to see as Perry and I go back and forth. But enough of the talk. Let's introduce Perry Shields right now. Hey, Perry.
Afternoon.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
You ready to talk
Very
Universal
good.
Horror?
Always.
And so tell me, you're retired, right?
That's correct, since last June.
What did you do before that?
For 17 years, I was a high school teacher. I taught English and then drama and film appreciation.
To high school kids?
Yes, mostly juniors and seniors.
Right. And so when you weren't doing that, what were you? Were you watching Universal Horror in your off time?
Well, of course, before, during, and after. Yes.
Did you start watching as a child?
Yes, I've always tried to pinpoint my earliest memory. I want to say it was about 4 or 5 years old. It was on. I grew up in L.A., so it was an L.A. station like Channel 5 or Channel 11 on maybe a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday afternoon, and I think it was either Man-Made Monster, Werewolf of London, or possibly Son of Frankenstein.
Mm.
And I remember watching those films, not being scared, even at that age, but being made sad. I was filled with sadness, especially I think Man-Made Monster is the one that really got me in the heart. I just felt so sorry for Dan McCormick in that film. And then very close to that time, the CBS afternoon movie was showing the Claude Rains Phantom of the Opera. And my father, who was a big movie buff, insisted that I sit down and watch that. And that, again, was another film where I wasn't so much scared as I felt really sorry for him. So I think what hooked me into Universal Monsters was not that they were scary, but that they engendered this kind of sadness in me that I really, I don't know, maybe I was a little bit of a masochist, but I wanted more of that. And around the same time, I saw The Incredible Mr. Limpet in the movie theaters, and that was also similar. Like, a man is transformed by circumstances beyond his control, and then he just has to live with it. I think that was the theme that I saw going through a lot of these films.
Right. Mr. Limpet becomes a fish, and he swims around the ocean, and he saves the world. I remember that. But same as you, I started watching Universal Horror as a kid on the television. I think I was first introduced by Sinister Seymour, Larry Vincent, on Channel 5, Seymour's Monster Rally and Fright Night. And he used to show all those great classic horror films. And he would appear in a little box and he would make comments about the film. Hey, you dummy, you put out that light. And he would make it really fun to watch the films. But today we're going to, as I said, we're paying tribute to Jack Pierce, kind of a Jack Pierce kind of themed show. And as we talk about him, I'll be showing, as I said, photos of him putting on makeup on different monster actors and stuff like that. Why don't you tell us, as I show some photos, when you did some research, what you found out about him when it came to finding out his background? I know he came to California to be a baseball player, correct?
Yes, Jack Pierce was Greek. Came here to become a baseball player. Uh, he was rather short. He was about 5'6", 5'7" ish. So a little short to be a baseball player. But he acted in silent films. Also did makeup. In 1926, he was made the head of the makeup department at Universal, and his first real notable creation for Universal was on Conrad Veidt in The Man Who Laughs as Gwynplaine, the man whose face is carved into a permanent smile. That was Pierce's makeup. And then Pierce just stopped acting and became the head of the makeup department at Universal, and stayed that way until 1946, 47. He never signed a contract with Universal. So what happened is in 1947 or so, right around the cusp of 46, 47, Universal was sold or merged with International Pictures to become Universal International. And the new regime wanted more prestige movies. So, monster movies were out. They weren't really crazy about Abbott and Costello, which had made them a lot of money in the 40s. And Pierce was out. All the technicians that they had used, a lot of them were out. And Westmore at that time was a big name in the makeup world. RKO, some of the other studios had a Westmore, maybe Paramount. And so Universal said, "Well, we want to name makeup artists like from a dynasty." So they hired Bud Westmore as their new head of makeup. And then he hired guys like Jack Keevan, Emile Levine to come work for him. So he thought that Westmore was in no way a Jack Pierce in that he didn't design and apply makeups. Pierce designed and applied the makeups that we're all familiar with. He had assistants as well, especially on the house movies where he had multiple makeups to do on multiple monsters. He did have assistants, but it was really his work that we saw.
Right. Now, we're taking a look at some photos, as you can see,
Mm-hmm.
of him applying all the different makeups there at Universal. And Bud Westmore, you're right. And Jack was actually the first to kind of, he invented his own way of applying the different makeups, especially on the Wolfman.
Yeah, Lon Chaney Jr. had a lot to say about the transformations. That it took 24 hours. They pinned the ends of his fingers down with pins onto a board. I don't know how much of that is to be believed, but the original Wolfman, you never see him transform facially. You see his feet, and then at the end of the movie, you see him go from wolf to man, and might be three or four stages of that makeup. So obviously Pierce would have had to apply it, take it off, apply a lesser version, take it off, apply a lesser version, take it off, like that. Unless they shot it in reverse, but I haven't really heard anything about that he built it up to the final version. It could be. It seems it would be easier to do it that way than to do a whole facial makeup, take it off, and apply a lesser version. Especially, I don't think that's true in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. That's where we first see a close-up of Chaney transforming with his head on a plaster pillow. But that's obviously not shot in reverse. So I think that Pierce has built the makeup on layer by layer. And I think in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, I tried slowing that sequence down and counted like maybe 5 or 6 different phases of that makeup in that movie. And I think House of Frankenstein, similarly, you saw that as well, and House of Dracula. So I think he had about 4 or 5 different phases of makeup for those transformations.
Right. I think I read that as well. And it's just fascinating how Lon would sit there 3, 4 hours at a time, and just apply and not move, sipping through a straw and stuff like that. Let's show some photos. I already showed a couple, showed the Wolfman, but let's go like from film by film. I'll go through them and then you give me your take on I guess the structure.
So yeah, that's from Bride of Frankenstein. And in this makeup, the monster had been burned in the mill, so his hairline is burned back, and you can really see those clamps along the ridge of his skull. So this makeup is a lot different than the makeup in the original Frankenstein. Notably the hair, the burn scars on his face. Pierce got rid of the dark shading under Karloff's eyes for this too. It kind of it makes him look a little less gaunt. He looks a little more filled out in this makeup than he did in the first film. Still, Karloff still took his bridge appliance out to get that sunken cheek. That was actual. That was real. What you see is what you get there.
Right.
But I think Pierce at this time was still building up the head with cotton, one piece at a time. And I think in Son of Frankenstein, that's where we have photos of Pierce with an actual like a rubber headpiece. So he started employing appliances. Pierce went through his life denying that he ever used appliances on any of his makeups. But the fact is he did use appliances, and we have photos of him using appliances. He may not have created them. I think he farmed it out. Ellis Berman, the father of Tom Berman, Berman's another great makeup dynasty name. Ellis Berman created the wolf nose for Chaney and the wolf man, the wolf's head cane. I think he may have created the Caris mummy mask that we see Pierce holding for Mummy's Ghost and Mummy's Curse. This Werewolf of London is a great makeup. I know a lot of people know the story here, and again, there's myth involving this makeup that we have a photo of the original design. It looked a lot more like Lon Chaney in 1941, but that Henry Hull objected to that makeup because he said that in the script of Werewolf of London, his wife and her friend have to recognize him as Dr. Glendon, his character. And then in that full Wolfman makeup, they couldn't have recognized him. So that sounds more true. So some of the myth involving this is that Henry Hull was vain and didn't want his face covered. Not true. It really had to do with the script. This, of course, is Karloff in The Mummy in 1932. 8 hours supposedly for this makeup for very few shots, as you know, and you never see him walking in this makeup. You only see his arm, and you see a couple bandages trailing up a stair, or trailing down the hall, but you never actually see him walk. But it's such an elaborate makeup and so beautiful.
Right. Talk about Igor. That's so special.
Oh yeah, there's another case where there's photos of Pierce holding that rubber broken neck piece to apply to Lugosi. The jagged teeth, of course, are an appliance. Whether or not Pierce made those teeth, I don't know. He may have farmed that out. But the thing that makes this makeup really work is Lugosi himself. It's probably one of his greatest roles. There you can really see a little bit more of the neck piece. But Lugosi's brought this makeup to life and created probably his greatest, if not the greatest, screen role of his career.
Right. It's funny. Pierce also did some lighter makeup as well, where he didn't have to do a lot, like on Dracula, where Lugosi told him, I do my own makeup. And
That's right.
so he didn't have much to do on there, but I think from then on in, Pierce, I think, made a pact with himself, like if he's going to be hired, he's going to, do the makeup. He's not going to just stand around. Is that right?
Right. Well, of course. And then also the union rules would have forbid actors from doing their own makeup. And so, however somebody insisted on doing it, I don't think they would have been able to. This is great. David Bruce and the Mad Ghoul. Very similar makeup to Dan McCormick on Lon Chaney and The Man-Made Monster, with that stipple to create that wrinkled, dried out look, but very effective.
Kind of like a lizard almost.
Almost, yeah.
Right. And then I also find it fascinating that Jack did all the different people who played Frankenstein. And with a little variation, I mean, all based on the Karloff structure, of course, but they all had different features. So when Glenn Strange, who later did Gunsmoke, came along, he was a Western star. He was in serials and stuff like that.
Right.
I think Jack was fascinated with his face.
That's what's printed, that Jack scouted the actors at Universal and came upon Glenn Strange and said, he's got the perfect face. So I believe this is from House of Dracula. Of course, Pierce making up Glenn Strange. There's a whole series of stills from House of Dracula of Strange at various points in the makeup. So that's why I think this is from that film.
Right. I mean, there's tons of photos of Jack applying makeup. Thank God it was all documented, where a lot of stuff is not. The only thing that I had discussion with Tony Patoco, who does life masks and busts, and we both agreed there's no photo that exists that he's seen of Jack Pierce applying the Frankenstein apparel to Lugosi. It just doesn't exist.
Or Chaney Jr. for that.
Oh, okay. And he was green. I mean, I guess why don't you talk about that? Why a lot of people ask why the monster was tinted green a little bit.
That's controversial as well. Pierce himself, in a 1962 interview, said that the monster's color was sky gray, and that it was a color that he had manufactured from Max Factor. So if Pierce said it was sky gray, I think, like, this is colorized.
Obviously, yeah.
But people say that the green photographed white. There may have been green tints, but I think if you look at Fred Gwynne's makeup in Munster Go Home,
he's gray.
A color film. It's gray, right? Almost bluish gray. But again, sky gray would have had tints of blue, I'm sure, rather than green. But I think there's also it might be from I can't remember the actress, either Gloria Jean or Deanna Durbin or one of the starlets at Universal in the 40s who visited a set with monster makeup, said the makeup was gray.
Right.
I remember it being gray. So I think the green thing, then people will cite that home movie footage of Son of Frankenstein
where he's joking around
with Pierce, but it's obviously the color is off on that. It looks green, like there's a green cast over the whole thing. So yeah, that's Son of Frankenstein.
Now, once again, it looks kind of olive green, right? To kind of,
but it's also colorized. I mean,
that's true.
The whole thing, even Jack's skin tone doesn't look real fleshy. It looks kind of green. Everything looks green. Yeah. And
then earlier we talked about the Mummy was probably the longest that every day where Karloff had to sit in the makeup chair. I mean, the dedication to precision and detail.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is that, they didn't have makeup. They didn't have Academy Awards for makeup until 1982. And so Pierce never got recognized except in 1932. He received an award from something called the Hollywood Filmograph. I'm not sure what that was, but he got a Hollywood Filmograph award for his makeup on the Mummy. And there's a photo of Karloff handing the award to Jack Pierce.
Wow.
So he did. That was, as far as I know, the only real formal recognition he ever received. And it was only for that film.
And you know what else is interesting? How in many of these films, the named ones, I can't recall, I'd have to look it up, Jack Pierce went uncredited, which is crazy.
That's true. Even in the 40s, it's very sporadic. Sometimes he gets credited, sometimes not. And it's inexplicable. I don't know why what happened.
It's like no makeup credit. It's just, there it is.
Yeah.
Let's
and
see.
Then he actually fought to get Carmen Dorigo credited. She was a hairstylist that worked with him. And in the later, I think you see Carmen Dorigo credited in 1945, 1944, you might see her name pop up. And that was because Pierce fought for it. And this, of course, is from Tower of London, 1939.
Right. Mord,
yes,
the executioner. Right. Mm-hmm. So we talked about Lugosi, obviously not the best film, Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, but I was always fascinated with Lugosi's kind of big nostrils and his big head.
Yeah, his head was shaped so differently than Karloff or Glenn Strange.
Right.
He had fuller cheeks and,
and a dimple.
And a dimple.
And what's interesting is almost every single Frankenstein, for some odd reason, and maybe you know about why this is, had like that birthmark on the right side of their cheek. Why was that?
Right. I believe that started with Karloff's dental appliance being removed, creating that sunken in cheek. But then later actors like Chaney, Lugosi, and Strange had good teeth. So I think that sunken cheek was replaced by a beauty mark or dimple like beauty mark. That's all I
Right.
can think.
Now, I was also researching. It's a travesty that Jack doesn't even have a star on the Walk of Fame yet. Any plans for that coming up down the road?
No, I know. Again, Scott Essman, producer writer, he was fighting to get Pierce a star, Lon Chaney Jr. a star, but the politics of the Walk of Fame and who they award stars to now, the money involved, makes it virtually impossible for those guys to get stars. They're kind of interested in they're interested in publicity for known commodities to that people are aware of today, and so I don't think that's going to happen, unfortunately.
Also, talk about a little bit how you've read and known, maybe you've met some of these people, how makeup legends like Tom Savini and some of the others who pay tribute, kind of who owe uh, Jack their kind of career.
Well, Dick Smith, as you know, who passed away a few years ago, Dick Smith got into makeup from watching Universal films on TV and fascinated with Pierce. And he was in a room with Jack Pierce once at some event in New York, I believe, because Dick Smith was from New York, and he was too shy to introduce himself. He regretted it years later that he was in a room with Jack Pierce and did not talk to him. But Dick Smith was hugely influenced by Pierce. Tom Savini, funnily enough, has said that the film Man of a Thousand Faces from 1957 was a film that really inspired him to get into makeup. So not really Pierce related, but definitely Universal related. And Rick Baker, of course, hugely influenced by Jack Pierce. And he won the first makeup Oscar for An American Werewolf in London. I think everything Baker does has a line to Pierce somewhere.
No, yeah, I would think all the great legendary makeup men would take kind of some little bits and pieces from Jack Pierce and make it their own. We mentioned at the beginning of the show that you have portrayed probably the only person ever in history to portray Jack Pierce on the stage. Unless I'm wrong, you can correct me. But I have some footage from there was, I guess, a special night almost 2 decades ago where you played Jack Pierce. And there's this little kind of short kind of that was put together that showed how they got you made up for that. Why don't you tell us a little intro to that, and then I'll show the clip.
Well, in a long story short, Scott Essman, again, I brought his name up before. Scott Essman had produced a tribute to John Chambers in 1997, another makeup artist, man behind Planet of the Apes. And then in 1999, Scott did a Wizard of Oz tribute to commemorate the 50th anniversary of that film. 60th anniversary of that film, 1999. A friend of mine who played the Tin Man in that tribute put me in touch with Scott because he knew he was doing a tribute to Jack Pierce in 2000 and thought that I should be involved. So I got involved. I got myself involved. I met Scott. I ended up being cast as the role of Jack Pierce. And this was a big production involving 16 characters and dozens of makeup artists who recreated Jack's monsters in a one night only stage show. It was at the International Makeup Artists Trade Show in Pasadena, June of 2000. It was 75 minutes, and it was an older Jack Pierce. I was playing Pierce at 79, going through a scrapbook, reminiscing about the various monsters he created while we would recreate those scenes on stage with actors playing the monsters and makeups created by like I said, dozens of makeup artists who were all working on this together. So that it was captured on video, although we had not planned for it to be any kind of DVD release. We just thought we were doing it for one night. The special thing is that Rick Baker, Dick Smith, some of these names, Bob Burns, Forey Ackerman, they were all in the audience that night watching the show. So that made it really, really special to know that they were there. Then Scott later took that footage, maybe a year to 2 years later, edited it into a DVD, and then that was sold. And I was a little bit horrified because had I known it was going to make it to DVD, I maybe would have approached it a little differently. I just thought we were doing this on stage one night only, and that was it. So we did that in 2000, and then there were several times after that through the 2000s that I recreated Jack Pierce for other events, sometimes as a 79-year-old, sometimes as his own age in the 40s.
But let's show a little clip of how you got into that makeup. I think I have it here.
On February 16th, 2003, Jack Pierce received a Lifetime Achievement Award by the Makeup Union, and we created 4 characters for the event at the Max Factor building in Hollywood, California. The first character that we created was Jack Pierce. The makeup was designed by Barney Berman and applied by Barney with his assistants Rebecca Wachtel and Cindy Miguens. The makeup was first used in June of 2000 and then applied here by Barney and his team for the Makeup Union Awards. Perry Shields played Jack Pierce himself. Perry had played the character in the June 2000 tribute to Jack Pierce.
Wow, that is simply amazing, Perry. So how many hours did you have to spend getting into the Jack Pierce makeup?
That was about 4.5 hours. And there was a neck appliance, neck, chin, nose, ears, bald cap. So we're talking about 6 or 7 different appliances on there. The only part of me that really was me were my lips and my eyes in that makeup. Everything else was an appliance. But like Scott, that's the voice of Scott Esman, the producer on that recording. And that makeup was very, very similar to the one I wore in 2000 for the International Makeup Artists Trade Show. Like he said, this was like maybe 2.5 or 3 years later for Jack Pierce's posthumous Lifetime Achievement Award from the Makeup and Hairstylist Guild. Barney Berman, who himself is an Oscar-winning makeup artist for Star Trek in 2009. Barney, that's him applying the makeup. He designed that makeup for me, applied it. In the year 2000, the first time we did the show, makeup artist named Andy Schoenberg actually applied it. But this time in 2003, it was Barney himself who was applying that makeup. But it was about 4.5 hours and about an hour and a half to take off. It doesn't just come off. You got to little by little, piece by piece, take that off. So it's it's quite the experience. But I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
It was fascinating. So now you kind of understood what it was like when the Karloffs and the Cheneys and the Lugosi's had to sit under the hot lamp and have the makeup applied. You're having it done to you. It must have been surreal. I mean, you're doing Jack Pierce on stage, but from the footage that I've seen, the way it was put together was so unique. Where Jack would a spotlight would be on him, and then different scenes from Universal Classic Horror would take place with the dialogue and actress playing Maliva, the gypsy woman from the Wolfman. Hurry, Sir John, hurry. And just all the different scenes where Dr. Pretorius goes, "Don't touch that lever, you'll kill us all," and then get away. And the monster goes, "No, you go, we stay, we belong dead." So it was just one scene after another in this 75-minute performance. I don't think it's ever been done or duplicated since then. The attention to detail, where you just go, "Oh my God!" It's like watching the movie right in front of you. It must have been amazing to have you. So you've watched it, but did you understand how great it was while you were actually performing it?
I think it was just so overwhelming, the scope of that one night thing, and having so many characters, so many makeup artists working on all these characters at once with very little rehearsal. I mean, we didn't rehearse this like a play, multiple nights. We had a few readings, uh, a little bit of blocking, but then we kind of just did it that night. And we couldn't get into that space until just a few hours before the actual show. So there would have been no way to do any kind of we didn't have a technical rehearsal or anything to really prepare. We just hoped it would work, and that was what we did. The makeups in that show, though, were kind of designed to look black and white. If you notice,
Yeah.
I think the costume design and makeup design was made to look black and white, which was a creative decision made on Scott's part and then agreed to by the makeup artist.
Yeah, from what I noticed, not only with that, kind of a black and white tone, the actors portraying the Universal Classic horror stars were dead on. The Maliva was dead on. I thought the Basil Rathbone for Dr. Frankenstein was dead on with the little thin mustache. And the guy who played Igor was great. I mean, doing all those lines, yes, he stays here. It's just some one after another. You keep waiting. Oh, someone's not going to look like someone. Someone's going to mess up. But each actor, I don't know if Scott casted that, but to find such actors to portray one Universal star after another was dead on. Do you think the same?
Oh yeah, the Scott cast everybody, and not everybody wore appliances, but like the Basil Rathbone, Dr. Pretorius, I believe they had some appliances to alter their appearance. Definitely wigs, definitely a lot of makeup. But we had, yes, from every major Pierce film. We had Fritz and Henry Frankenstein, Pretorius, the Bride. The Bride was magnificent. Sheila Marie Shostak, who played the Bride, had played the Bride at Universal Studios. So she already had a little experience, but that wig was beautiful. The costume, Jennifer McManus was the costume designer, and she tried to recreate those costumes like Basil Rathbone's real distinctive, his clothing from Son of Frankenstein. All of that was really meticulously created with a lot of love and care.
And it was all dead on. It was just almost like they came to life, which was the whole point. As Jack reads from his diary or from his scrapbook, everybody comes to life one after another. In our closing moment here, kind of what do you kind of foresee in the future for, I guess, Jack Pierce? Is there any more honorariums coming up? Any other memorials that you know of? If not, I think there should be. And I want to see you play a young Jack Pierce, Perry.
Well, I kind of did. If you're familiar with Monsterpalooza, it's the twice yearly event in Pasadena and Burbank convention that celebrates the art of monsters. And the very first Monsterpalooza in 2009, now 16 years ago, I did play a younger Jack Pierce for a 30-minute version of that, but it was more like using PowerPoint slides. We didn't have anybody else. So I was showing slides and talking about my career as like a 40-something Jack Pierce. And so they did a special makeup on me for that. It was through a cinema makeup school that created that makeup. But you had said in the very beginning that Pierce is sort of unheralded. I think that was definitely true for many, many decades. But I think as a result of what Scott started in 2000, Pierce has been more discussed and more talked about. And now, in Universal Orlando, they have this epic universe. It's a monster universe that they created with animatronics and all kinds of things that honor Pierce's makeups. I don't know that he's named in that exhibit or that ride, but his creations are certainly present. So I think that his legacy is absolutely being kept alive today. Just maybe not with his name over it, but at least, that look again of the Frankenstein monster. You can ask any kid, show a picture of Karloff as the Frankenstein monster and say, who is this? And they'll say Frankenstein. But that's really due to Jack Pierce.
Absolutely. And was just a great man. He's like a nice man. Obviously, I think he died in 68 or 69. But if social media was around, I mean, he'd have his own website. He'd have 1 million followers on Facebook. Everybody, he'd be a cult figure. There's no two ways about it. But anyway, I want to thank you, Perry, for coming on the show and sharing your stories of Universal horror and portraying Jack Pierce, famed Universal makeup man. And you've really done a service. I thought, I'm so glad that you were able to do that in the modern era, and it got out for a lot of people to see. So thanks so much for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Well, just one last thing, I'm sure you can totally relate to this. Being a monster fan my whole life, and here I was 39 when we did that Jack Pierce show. But sitting in the makeup chair, being made up as Jack Pierce, and in walks Forey Ackerman, in walks Bob Burns, Dick Smith. I'm thinking, this is like every monster kid's dream. I'm like living inside of it now. So it wasn't lost on me how privileged and lucky I was to be able to do that. How it happened, and it's a highlight of my life.
I'm sure it was crazy to see. Hi, I'm Forey, and you did Welcome to the Acker Mansion. Great job, Perry. But no, once again, thanks for coming and sharing your stories on the Classic Universal Horror Podcast. I am your host, Jay Jennings. Join me next time when we'll have another interesting guest, and we'll talk about Classic Universal Horror and what it meant to them as well. So until next time, as I always say, stay scared.